What is going on, y'all? What is going on, y'all? What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
I told myself coming on, I'm taking all the hards.
You what?
Just give me the hard part.
30.
God, I forgot about the wager. I would have played the game completely different.
It's not the Ravens.
Who is it? Who is it?
It is actually the Eagles.
Oh, Jalen Hurts!
Yeah, Shirley had 105. Yep.
I'll wager a 30 point.
It's gonna be hard for you to blow this. Respective draft classes, who was selected higher, Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre?
Rodgers.
What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman back at it again with the Cave every Tuesdays at 8, but tonight 8:30 p.m. Eastern, and we get to talk about the current landscape of the NFL. Going back to Week 12, going to talk about Week 13. We have a lot of ground to cover tonight, and I'm very excited to have a very special guest on to help me break it all down. Akash, thank you for joining me tonight, man. It's going to be a great time. If you're not familiar with Akash, I've been following him since the beginning of this season. I actually came across your page on Twitter, and I've been a huge fan of yours, fantasy football wise. I'm not the biggest genius when it comes to the whole thing, but you've definitely been a big help to me. And why don't you just give yourself a quick introduction, man? Thank you for hopping on.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, man. I am Akash. I'm on Twitter at YZR_fantasy. I do fantasy football. My mentality when approaching the game is very data driven, and so anytime I give a take, I back it up with numbers. And I've grown a solid following on Twitter. I'm a college student, sophomore at Boston University, doing mechanical engineering. So right now fantasy football is part-time for me, but I really love the fantasy space and growing in the space, and excited for things that come. So if you want to come follow me, see what's up, I'm on Twitter, YZR_fantasy. Sometimes I make jokes too. It's great. We have a good time.
Yeah, dude, going to BU, that's a big commitment, man, to do both. And I know you put a lot of time and effort into your work with the fantasy football, and I'd only imagine you put double to triple the amount of time into your major. So that
maybe
deserves a lot of recognition. So pats on back to you. That's pretty awesome that you're able to multitask like that. That's really damn cool. All right, well, let's kick things right off, man. We have a lot to cover, as we always do. The NFL spoon feeds you news, especially when we're in season. And we'll start with the recent cave paintings. This is just to break down the recent news. And I could have had 14,000 headlines, but I picked the 4 that I felt were most important to the recent goings-ons in the league. The first one is, of course, going to be something that's not major, but something to note. The Chiefs signed Melvin Gordon as well as Bryan Edwards this past week. Melvin Gordon was recently cut by the Broncos after pretty much taking Javonte Williams' job and then eventually losing his own after he tore his ACL. And Bryan Edwards, who I thought was, wasn't deserving to be out there up for grabs, and he ends up going to the Chiefs, who have a plethora of relatively solid pass catchers, and he's a boundary receiver that I think if he's able to work his way onto the roster and gain some playing time would be a big help to Mahomes. Do you think this is moving the needle for the Chiefs at all?
Not really. I mean, as we've seen, Melvin's been one of the most ineffective rushers in the NFL. On a roster that includes Chase Edmonds, Mike Boone, and Latavius Murray, Melvin Gordon ends up getting cut. To be fair, I mean, this is kind of in his favor, kind of against him. In his favor was that they had that Boone and Edmonds were both hurt, and for a second I'm like, that's like a point to him, but it should be a point against him, because despite their total lack of depth at the position, with those two hurt as well as Javonte going on IR earlier in the season, they still cut him. He's been horrible this entire year, and so they just decided to move on and cut ties. Edwards as well has not been good at any point in his NFL career. I come from a fantasy perspective where he's never been good for fantasy. I guess for in the NFL, he can make a splash play or two, but he's not really good at anything except maybe an occasional jump ball. But he's not a guy that gets separation or really wins and affects your team that much. So not that surprised to see him end up on waivers, but the Chiefs add both of them to their practice squad. It's something where they're familiar names, but I'm not sure if they contribute much down the stretch. Melvin Gordon is doing his LaShawn McCoy thing, hoping to get a ring.
Yeah, really, he definitely is. I wonder if it's like you said. I mean, Melvin Gordon gets cut from a team that was already lacking depth, and the guys they did have were already relatively ineffective and inefficient themselves. So he's going to the Chiefs, where who knows? Maybe he's able to crack the starting roster, get some playing time. I know they've really come down to Isaiah Pacheco down the stretch here. He's not been the most effective rusher either. I wouldn't say he's been too efficient. So maybe a veteran like that, if he's able to hold on to the ball, would be beneficial for them down the stretch. I would personally say, at least as of right now, Melvin Gordon, in theory, at his best, should be better than Pacheco right now. But I guess
he's not at his best, though.
Yeah, he's not. Right, exactly.
It's Pacheco's been pretty efficient so far this season. The one who was not efficient was Edwards-Helaire, who has just not been that good on a rushing efficiency perspective. Actually worse than Melvin Gordon in rushing yards over expected. Pacheco has been good in that department. And obviously you have Ronald Jones there, who's barely played, as well as Jerick McKinnon, who plays passing snaps. He has his role pretty defined. He's not going to take much rushing unless like a lot of injuries happen. Like if Pacheco was to get hurt and Edwards-Helaire's already on IR, you think that the two that like Gordon and you think like Gordon and McKinnon would just split the rushing, but it wouldn't be that effective. So I don't think it moves the needle that much for them. It's needed depth with Edwards-Helaire on IR, but nothing that serious, honestly, in my opinion.
Right, yeah, I probably won't end up being that much, but it definitely two bigger names that the Chiefs just get their hands on, and they also got Kadarius Toney earlier in the year, who's once again struggling with that hamstring, but they just are stacking up whatever names they can find across the board to fill out this roster. But the second big piece of recent news that we are not really awaiting, but it's inevitably happening. Deshaun Watson is set to return for Cleveland this weekend. He goes against the Houston Texans, of course, the team that had dealt him. Do you think Watson's going to be able to return and play at the level that we knew him prior, or do you think he's going to struggle on this roster that's been struggling in general this year? What are you expecting from Deshaun in this instance?
Yeah, so what we've seen from Watson throughout his entire career is he's a good NFL quarterback. He's a great NFL quarterback. And so what I think we see from him is I would just expect him to like ease right back into being a great quarterback. Obviously, there's the potential when there's this much uncertainty, there's a potential for there to be some struggles. You change team, you haven't played in a year or two. So maybe there's a slow start, but by and large, I would expect him, if not in game one, but over the course of the rest of the season, I would expect him to look like the Watson we've seen from him in years past.
Yeah, I'm thinking, you hit the nail on the head. I kind of feel the same exact way. Year two will probably be when that, things kind of turn around for the Browns. This season has been a complete wreck. I don't think when they traded for Watson, they anticipated having the issues they are currently having right now. And I would argue that Jacoby Brissett's done a pretty fine job. I think the quarterback position is one of the last issues, that this roster is dealing with. And, he's going to come in, and unless he suddenly return to a top 5 quarterback type form, I don't see this necessarily making that much of a difference just because of how well Brissett's already played. So it's just going to be up to the rest of the roster to pick up the slack. And I'm not too sure that's going to happen. So maybe in year two, when Watson's more, acclimated and they're a little bit healthier, that things will be different. But for right now, I don't expect much different to change for the Browns, which is kind of crazy to say because I for one kind of expected them to be more in the playoff hunt at this point. As crazy as that may sound, and they easily could be if they hadn't blown a few games that I thought they easily should have come out on top. And I mean, they have looked like a decent team, especially decent offense at many points of this season. So not ashamed because it's not a shame because I'm not a big fan of the Browns considering the recent transactions, but Deshaun Watson's probably not changing much for them right this second.
I don't know if I agree with that, honestly. So Jacoby Brissett he's been okay. He's a game manager, obviously. And so in that role, he's done fine. Like nothing that's cost his team too many wins, but he's not that great of a quarterback. And so with Watson, you have the potential to really unleash the passing game, especially with the great season that Amari Cooper's been having, and Peoples Jones emerging as a solid option, as well as David Njoku. I like David Bell as a prospect. I don't know if he's going to do anything that significant. He's a fine role player, though, so far. And so when you have Watson, who we've seen be a top 5 quarterback in the past, you have a massive ceiling for this passing game, and that can really change the way that you're performing as an NFL team. And so, with their current record, which I believe we just finished week 12, right? They're like 4-7, just beat the Bucks 4-7. I don't think they get to the playoffs or make much noise if they somehow squeeze in. But I think if you are for some reason after all this still a Browns fan, you'll see this offense ramp up with Watson returning, and you can look to the future and say, okay, with this, maybe there's other holes in the roster, but if you look at their offense, you have to feel pretty good about what they're building over there.
Yeah, I mean, I think
top 5 quarterback is always going to be conducive to having an elite passing offense.
Yeah, for sure. If Watson's able to get to that point, it'll be game changing for them, and he's got that capability. It's just a matter of what kind of floor. We all know what his ceiling looks like. It's just the floor that we're not too sure of when it comes to Watson, and I think that could be as low as you would expect somebody that hasn't played 2 years. 2 years in the NFL to be. So, time will tell with that situation, but it definitely will be something to watch. And it could turn out, I mean, the only saving grace for the Broncos right now is that if this somehow turns out just as bad, maybe the Broncos won't look as bad themselves regarding the trade that they had with Russell Wilson. But like I said, another situation that we have to let time decide. But speaking of Russell Wilson, that brings us to the piece of recent news here, number 3. Defensive tackle Mike Purcell loses it on Russell Wilson this weekend because he's frustrated. The defense has played like a top unit for a majority of the year. I think there's some stat out there that would say that the Broncos would only have 1 or 2 losses if they scored more than 18 points, per game.
I've seen that.
And it's just been a disaster. And how much they given up for him. And I'm sure they're sick of hearing his mouth and there's nothing happening on the field. Do you think there's any type of positivity to take from this whole situation? And if the Broncos have a chance to turn it around, going forward, obviously not this year, but
no, absolutely not really. I mean, the only saving grace is Russell Wilson's resume. And so it's not like they traded all of this like a hypothetical to move up to 1st overall and draft someone, and then they turn out to be this bad. You have 10 years of Russell Wilson being a very good NFL quarterback, and that's really the only thing to cling on to. But his his decline has just been very shocking. It wouldn't obviously like you'd expect this to continue going forward just because it has been so bad. But there's a sliver of hope of just like if he can get back to himself, then he can turn around. But most likely, it's not looking great because you gave up these picks. I think the pick that they gave up in the 23 draft is top 10 right now, maybe the top 5. Obviously, that's horrible. Like if you're an NFL team, you would take the 5th overall pick by itself over Russell Wilson. Plus his contract where you can't move on from him at all over the next few years, and he's making like $50 million a year. It's all around bad for them. Your only hope is him turning it around, and even that's a slim chance.
Yeah, for sure. And you can't even blame. They had a couple guys that went down due to injury. We mentioned Javonte earlier, Tim Patrick, which I think maybe had a little bit more of an impact on this offense than we could have projected. But still, I mean, he's missing simple reads. He's not escaping the pocket like we've all known him to. I mean, this guy was one of the leaders in taking sacks when he probably shouldn't because of how long he used to hold onto the ball and try to extend plays. And now it just looks like he doesn't know how to move. And he's lost all athleticism. I mean, he's a complete shell. If he's able to turn it around, it'll be a miraculous turnaround. But I mean, I don't know if there's any type of transformation that's going to be saving the Broncos at this point. But who knows? I'm not rooting against him. I like the guy, but
he's a little corny. But by and large, it's not like he's a bad person. Maybe he's a little annoying sometimes. Does heinies on the flight while everyone else is trying to sleep. A little bit of a dick move, but. He's an all right guy from what I can tell, and so yeah, it's something where it pretty much has to rebound. Otherwise, if you're the Broncos, you're just waiting out the contract, and then maybe you have a shot to rebuild in like 2025 or something like that. Wonder if they're gonna, like, if this continues to be bad like all throughout this year and next year, do you think they do like a Brock Osweiler type of deal where they pay someone to take on his contract?
Yeah,
That'd
I
be
mean
very funny.
it's possible, right? I mean, I think the only way to give this a true, genuine shot is if you move on from Nate Hackett after this year. I mean, you gotta,
Yeah,
think
yeah,
something can change with the head coaching difference. I mean, if you go from
I think that's the
Russ,
best path of action, just because
yeah,
Russ, 10 years of resume being a great NFL quarterback. Hackett had a good offense when Aaron Rodgers was his quarterback. And so to me, that's an obvious of which one should go and then see if it turns around.
right. But yeah, I mean, who knows? That possibility you mentioned, like the Osweiler possibility, if they go through two coaches and things still don't change, then we can't rule out any possibility with what the Broncos can do, because they could get desperate to try and turn things around. But my final piece of recent news, this happened last night, and I still am dumbfounded. My jaw is still on the floor watching the result of this game. Jeff Saturday's clock management. This was quite possibly some of the worst clock management by a professional football team I have seen in my 21 years on this earth. I was just confused. I had no words watching this final drive unfold. And from start to finish, they got the ball with 3:28 left with 4 clock stoppages with the 2-minute warning. And they still somehow let time be a factor. I've never been more dumbfounded.
It's insane. Hey, man, you can't blame Jeff Saturday, okay? He only has experience coaching at the high school level. It's not his fault. It's just insane. Like, I remember a week ago, everyone's like laughing about how, maybe the Jeff Saturday hire isn't that bad. No, it's definitely bad. This guy has experience coaching high school, and it definitely showed last night. It was just an awful product that they put on the field in terms of what they did in the last 4 minutes. Just truly baffling how he got that job. I'm still wondering that. We're going to look back in 20 years and we're going to laugh about it, because we do like to laugh about these things. I'm laughing about it right now. But I'm just going to wonder how he got to this point. Sitting here, I'm thinking, what was going through Jim Irsay's head? There's so many decisions you can make, so many qualified coaches you could call up. And you call up the former player who has experience only at the high school level of coaching, not even college. Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was the most blatant, like, buddy hire that has been made in the last decade. And, I to his credit, although interim head coaches seem to have this force field around them in their first game, they do come out and beat the Raiders, right? In
yeah,
their first
the
game.
Raiders.
Which doesn't mean much, but
I'm not going to pat them on the back that much for that.
Right. Not at all. And, they did start to, like, somewhat to Jeff Saturday's credit, they have gotten Jonathan Taylor going ever since he did take over. But yesterday against the Steelers, I mean, it seemed like, I didn't really look over the numbers, but it seemed like they were doing everything they can to keep the ball out of his hands at points, despite the fact that he was averaging like five yards per touch. And, they weren't using Jonathan Taylor as much as I felt like they should have, and he still went over 100 yards. And like we said at the end of that game, it was just a complete disaster. I thought the way that Matt Canada play calls with a lead, that they had every opportunity to take over in the second half, and they certainly did. Their defense played very well, but I mean, that final drive was, Madden players, Madden professionals, just regular Madden players.
Just play Madden for once in your life, Jeff Saturday.
I know, like, the clock management that you have to have in Madden would easily prep you for an easy situation.
I know, it's insane. Watching that game and having to watch Matt Canada call it offense with a lead versus Jeff Saturday try to come back is like watching, like, it's just a horrible product on both sides of the field, and just made the game a little bit unwatchable. At one point, I was watching the game and it was almost done, and I was hanging out with some of my friends, and we're just hanging out, doing random things, having fun, and I'm just like, screw this game, man. I don't have to be here. I'm gonna go have fun and put my phone away, because at one point it was just completely unwatchable on both sides.
Yeah, and it's not the first game that the Colts have been in that was the case with two different head coaches. But anyway, we'll move on. We're going to go to our Over the Fire segment. This is a pretty straightforward segment. I'm going to present to you 3 different scenarios, coaches, players, teams, whatever it could be. And you're going to tell me whether they're cooked, they're screwed, they're done for, or they're uncooked. There's still time for them to turn it around. There's still hope, blah, blah, blah. And the first cooked or uncooked candidate is going to be Zach Wilson's career with the New York Jets. Is that cooked or is that uncooked?
Oh, man, that's so far cooked. It's overcooked. It's charred. It's so cooked. Nothing but bad football throughout his entire NFL career. As a rookie, you had bad football. I believe in maybe completion percentage over expected. One of the worst, if not the worst season over the past few years. Is truly awful. And then you say, okay, added some weapons, added protection, et cetera, et cetera. Can he improve in year 2? And he does not at all. It has just been an awful product. Like the splits of their passing offense with and without Zach Wilson are astounding. It's not like they're even getting good quarterbacks out there. It's Joe Flacco and Mike fucking White. Are you kidding me? And these guys are outshining you by a mile. It's so bad. And then right when he gets benched, a bunch of stuff comes out about how people weren't. I don't pay attention to all that noise, so I don't know exactly what's happening. But there was a lot of some negative press surrounding Zach Wilson, and so him in New York is cooked, and him as an NFL starting quarterback is cooked. His I don't even want to say Sam Darnold arc starts now, because at least Darnold started in Carolina. His Josh Rosen arc starts now.
Yeah, I was kind of gonna say, do you think he has closer to a Josh Rosen type career at this point, or maybe like a Sam Darnold, just because he was drafted so high? Granted, Sam Darnold was drafted, I think,
second, third overall.
Pretty much.
Saquon was second, third overall, yeah.
And Wilson was third second. Himself, second.
He was second, yeah.
He was
roughly
same
draft capital,
spot,
basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, does he get the Josh Rosen treatment, or will he get shipped off to potentially try and turn his career around like Baker or like Darnold? But
yeah, I've seen. You see it with these guys with pedigree. Even Trubisky started some games in Pittsburgh, but Rosen started a little bit in Miami during their tank year, I believe. So, hey man, nothing's impossible. But no, I don't think he ever has meaningful playing time outside of injury again. He'll start a little bit just because there is people will cling on to the pedigree and potential upside, and they'll look at the Jets and say, oh, look how they've never been good at quarterbacks, so maybe we can fix them the way that Matt Rule foolishly did to Sam Darnold. But
he did it twice too. He did it.
It's twice. Not. I know. Yeah, he did that with Baker too. It's just. So, yeah, maybe Zach Wilson's starting for the Panthers next year, but it is just – no, he's never going to be nothing's guaranteed, but 99.9% chance he's never a good quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I totally agree. I knew what the answer was before I even asked you, but I figured we had to touch on it to some extent.
I know. I just talked for way too long about something that no one disagreed with, but just had to – I don't know. It's fun to get the layups.
Yeah, it totally is. Especially on a kid that, he had like you mentioned, he had a little bit of an attitude after that game with the Patriots. What he said was he didn't think he had any fault in the loss of the Patriots.
That. And he came out later and apologized for it. And they got benched. Yeah, I wonder if he hadn't said that, would he have still gotten benched? The optics were so bad that I feel like they rushed into it. Normally you don't see quarterbacks get benched like this in year 2 that quickly. Especially not when winning. I
think if it was any other coach, we know who. We kind of have a good picture painted of who Robert Saleh is as a man and a head coach. I think he probably took that that lack of accountability aspect, and he probably hated that way more than the play on the field. So I think that probably just was.
And that's saying a lot, because the play on the field is just gone.
Yeah,
I saw this one stat comparing the numbers of Heineke to Zach Wilson. And they're pretty similar. Both teams are winning, and Heineke keeps his job because the team's winning, and Zach Wilson loses his job despite the team winning. Nothing to Zach Wilson's credit. Bad quarterback play is bad quarterback play. Yeah. But it is just funny how the narratives change when you have no expectations like Heineke versus a lot of expectations like Zach Wilson.
Yeah, that is
Heineke's also still a bad quarterback. Don't get it twisted.
No, yeah, Heineke's been Heineke. It's not hard. I almost feel like it's it's not hard to show just a little bit of leadership, accountability to hold. I mean, he goes above and beyond in those respects, but
Yeah,
it's not hard to show.
From an emotional standpoint, he's solid. From a NFL play perspective, it's not. Like, congratulations, you got the win because your defense held the Atlanta offense to 10 points. Congrats.
Exactly. That's
wouldn't have
exactly
happened without him galvanizing the locker room, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that situation's a dumpster fire, but at least they're a good football team everywhere else. But we'll move on to the second cooked or uncooked candidate. And this is going to be the Ravens' hopes of being contenders. Is that cooked or is that uncooked?
So the offense is still it's all right, despite not having Rashad Bateman. Like, obviously, not having Bateman has definitely impacted their passing offense, where Lamar in the first 3 weeks when he had Bateman had 10 passing touchdowns. And then over the last 8 weeks, I believe, he has 7. Like a stark difference. Mark Andrews obviously still great, but then Duvernay, Prochet, Demarcus Robinson, Deshaun Jackson, none of them are even quality wide receiver 2s. I don't even know if any of them are quality wide receiver 3s. It's just awful what they have at wide receiver up. And then you have Mark Andrews at tight end, but that's not going to make a functioning passing game. Obviously, they're still very dynamic in the rushing game, including Lamar himself. They have other guys. They'll get Dobbins back soon. So they can definitely still put out a solid product offensively. Like, right now, they're second in the league in rushing expected points added per game. They're middle of the pack in drop back expected points added per play. So it's all right. I think they can still contend. I don't pay attention to defense a lot, so I'm clicking around looking at it. But it seems like they have a good defense. They have a pretty good defense, I think. So yeah, I don't know. They can definitely contend, I think, to the point where I don't know if they're Super Bowl contenders, but I think they could win a playoff game.
Yeah, I mean, their defense is good enough to get them over that hump. If their offense has some inefficiencies, and we've seen that, over the last few weeks, the offense does stutter more often than not. The defense is able to play stout enough to keep them in the game. But I think the Rashad Bateman point you made was a big one. They were relying on him to be the guy there, and he might not be the most talented receiver in the world to carry that title, but he was enough given the Greg Roman.
He can be a unit. Top 40, top 30 wide receiver in the NFL, and on a team with the Ravens where you don't invest much in the wide receiver and where you have Andrews as your number one option, that's fine as a wide receiver 1. He was great. Marquise Brown is a great player. He was really good for their offense. They're definitely missing him right now, as well as Bateman on injured reserve, and so if they had either one of those, I'd feel a lot more confident about the offense. But without either of them, just Andrews there, it's all right, because Andrews is a great player himself, but it's just nothing that I don't know if they're with their offense right like this they can contend for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think I was really high on the Ravens going into the season. I thought they would be one of the toughest teams to beat in the AFC and the NFL in general.
Yeah.
Just because
in the first 3 weeks they looked great. I mean, that offense was terrific.
Yeah, it was.
Some tough injuries.
Yep, and they've dealt with that. I mean, that's been the story of the Ravens for the last 2 seasons now, is the injury bug on both sides of the ball. Last year it was bad. Yeah. This year it's not as worse, but unfortunately they're just not able to stay healthy in areas that they really need to stay healthy in, and it's been their Achilles heel lately.
They need to invest in wide receiver depth in the offseason. You'll get Bateman back, obviously, but I think they should look to get some additional players in the 3rd, 4th round of the draft.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think they built their team with the right idea in mind, but they didn't take into account what could possibly happen in a scenario like this. Almost like what the Colts didn't account for, after Pittman and Pierce went down. I think they were hurt in week 4, week 5, both of them collectively. And
I remember that game.
38-year-old Matt Ryan behind a shell of an offensive line, and there's no separation, no yard. It was terrible. I mean, you just got to account for these types of things that, it might seem unlikely, but when they do happen, you need to be able to optimize your offense differently. And, these are 2 teams that have struggled in that sense. So I would say personally that their hopes of being contenders are cooked just because of injuries, straight up, unfortunately, because I'm a big fan of the Ravens right now.
Yeah.
But my final cooked or uncooked candidate is going to be this. Aaron Rodgers' time in Green Bay. Is that cooked or uncooked?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit cooked. Obviously, there's been a lot of things over like the multiple off seasons about him retiring or wanting to move on. I think he just signed an extension, but at 38, when your play is declining, you just kind of see Occam's razor of this might be the end of him as an elite quarterback. And obviously, it's Aaron Rodgers, and so you always have that chance of bouncing back. And it certainly doesn't help when you don't have many good wide receivers. When Christian Watson was playing a full snap share, Rodgers had some good games, and so it's definitely something where Rodgers could bounce back. But with all things off the field as well as the play on the field taking a little bit of a hit, and as well as the injuries, I think it is something where, yeah, we're not going to see him in Green Bay. Obviously, in like 5 years, you're not going to see him there. But I think over the next couple of years, you could see him leave.
Yeah, I don't know. I was struggling with this one myself because we saw Jordan Love step in after he got hurt, and granted, he wasn't making the craziest of throws, but he looked confident. I mean, he was moving, navigating the pocket, making off-platform throws with very solid arm strength and accuracy. And I mean, we heard that he was decent in preseason, but I didn't expect to see him step in that instance and do what he did against what is at least supposed to be a good Eagles defense, right? And it almost makes me feel like, maybe with Aaron Rodgers, struggling lately with injury, of course, their offseason history, maybe if he continues to play, they would be looking to start the rebuild now. I thought they should have started it. When was I on this rant? It must have been prior to him making amends with the Packers, so prior to this year. So I thought they should have moved on from this ship a while ago, but they're still here. And if Jordan Love shows any type of promise, why wouldn't you decide to turn things around? I mean, Joe Barry's got this defense playing like they've never stepped on an NFL field before. They've also struggled with injuries. The injuries have been bad this season, man.
Yeah.
But what's the point in holding on to Aaron Rodgers at this point? I guess
there's really no point. I mean,
right.
I don't know. Like the futile attempts to contend for a title doesn't make sense. It's not going to happen. And so, yeah, I agree with you that the time to move on was over the offseason. Before you extended him, when everyone was knocking on your door asking for Aaron Rodgers, you could have traded away the same way that Seahawks traded away Russell Wilson. They got a massive haul for him. I don't know what the haul would have been for Rodgers because of his age, but it definitely would have been a first plus, I think. Definitely would have been more than a first. So looking back, maybe I don't know. It's not purely hindsight because I know how I think, and I would have thought the same thing before. But looking back, it's even more obvious that he should have moved on from him. He's 38. Maybe it was 37 before they extended him. But the idea is still there. If you have a chance to move on from a 37-year-old quarterback for a first round plus, probably take that opportunity, even if they are at their best as good as Aaron Rodgers, winning back-to-back MVPs. Like not every quarterback is Tom Brady. Your most likely outcome is a decline around 39, 40 years old. Like we saw with Manning and Breeze and Rivers. We're seeing it with Ryan. We're seeing it with Rodgers even. And so, yeah, it's just something where I probably should have moved on from your aging quarterback when the time was right.
Yep, I agree wholeheartedly, and it's coming back to bite him in the ass right now. But I guess we'll see what they end up doing this offseason. But I don't think he's going to end on this type of note. So I think we'll be seeing him after the season. I don't think he retires. Whether he's in Green Bay or not. But we'll move on to the Q&A segment. A couple questions that I have for you, and I mean, I've been asking questions all show, but in a different format. My first question here for you is going to be this. Who will overpay for Josh Jacobs when he becomes a free agent?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I think he might stay. It makes sense for him to stay as a Raider. Just because players would like to stay on the same team and they see what he's doing for them. Obviously, it's not converting into wins. I mean, he won the game a couple of days ago, but they're not a winning team this year. But Jacobs has broken out to become a very, very good player. And so when I think the most likely outcome is that he stays as a Raider. It's tough that they declined his 5th-year option, but at the end of the day, he'll be 24, 25 heading into the offseason. They could definitely pay him and make him one of the higher paid running backs. I think he's going to be like the first running back in a couple years to get a really big extension, right?
Yeah, I mean,
A really
it's the
big,
way
really
things are
big
lining up.
contract.
Yeah.
Because Chubb was extended the year before his rookie deal was up. He was a 2nd rounder. And then Saquon hasn't been paid since he was a rookie. No one else in the 2019 class has been extended. And so I think Jacobs could have the biggest deal since, I believe, Nick Chubb. It's been a minute, but I believe that could be where the bar is.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing obviously, I think from a general public standpoint, we collectively have come to realize that running backs are pretty expendable. And I think, teams
absolutely.
are starting to really ride that wave themselves nowadays. And, like you said, we haven't seen a running back get paid in a while for that exact reason, nor have we really seen, of course, we have our top running backs in the league, but they play to their, what we expect them to play to. And they necessarily didn't have their value skyrocket during a single season, at least when it came to their pay period. In Josh Jacobs' case, like, this is his contract year, and he's running like, he really wants that bag. He's running like I would argue a top 5 running back right now. Not, of course, in general,
definitely.
But he's totally
right now. I think he's contending for top 1 running back.
Yeah, for real. The way he's running right now, 100,000%. So it's kind of, the stars are aligning to where he can really, I don't want to say fool, because I think he's a very good back, but this is only so sustainable for so long. It's just this is not a rate that is going to keep up, in my opinion. And we've seen it with running backs. The fall off is inevitable. Although
if a team goes and wants to pay Josh Jacobs like 14 to 16 million per year, I'm gonna laugh at them. Absolutely. It's not something that's very advisable, and it's gonna impact your team long term. Because after the Packers signed Aaron Jones to 12 million a year for 4 years, and after Derrick Henry for 12.5 for 4 years, they had to trade away their star wide receivers. And after, with their running backs staying in place, their offense wouldn't have changed much if they had left, because obviously running backs are more replaceable. But the second they traded away their elite top 5, top 8 wide receivers, their offense starts to crumble. I don't think that it's very advisable for someone to pay Josh Jacobs as a top 5 running back, but I think he will get a contract like that. The last couple of running backs to get paid were Connor and Fournette over the last offseason. And they got 7 mil per year. I think Jacobs could get double that.
Yeah, I think Jacobs easily sees north of 10.5 at least.
10, I think that's low.
It probably is low.
Aaron Jones was signed 2 years ago, and it was 12 million. Henry was 2 years ago for 12 million. Dalvin Cook, Kamara, CMC, all these guys. CMC was signed 2 years ago for 16 million. I think Jacobs with the with the expanding cap, I think he could see a top 3 running back deal, which would be in the ballpark of 14, 15, 16 mil, or he could maybe reset the market. I'm not sure, but
that
just the way that
interesting.
Contracts get bigger every single year, so I would not be surprised with no one getting paid over the last couple of years. I wouldn't be surprised if Jacob resets the market.
Yeah, this will definitely be interesting to watch, and if he goes and breaks the market himself, we'll know that there are going to be other guys out there looking for a nice payday.
Because a lot of other guys get it to their.
This is a big free agent class for running backs.
The biggest ones being Saquon and Josh Jacobs, and so with those two, yes, it's going to be something where they're going to be vying for who gets the bigger contract, I think. So maybe it's a little bit of playing chicken to see which one what the other one signs for.
Yeah, I know that's gonna be fun, something to look forward to this offseason. But my second question for you is going to be this pretty straightforward. Where is Odell Beckham Jr. going to end up landing?
Probably either the Cowboys or the Giants, I think, right? I mean, I've heard a lot of teams in the mix, like the Ravens, the Chiefs, the Bills, but it seems like it's going to come down to those two. At the end of the day, he wants to be a contender. And I think based on which teams that have been most rumored for him to go to, as well as the teams that have the best chance of contending. I think the Cowboys are looking like a very likely option. Obviously, it's a huge market for him, just like LA was. And so, yeah, I think that's probably where he ends up. I obviously wouldn't be surprised if he ends up on the Chiefs or the Bills, because who wouldn't want to play with Mahomes or Josh Allen? But I think it's looking like the Cowboys. Michael Gallup is a solid NFL player. They just extended him I believe 5 years, $60 million, so 12.5 per. It's fine. He's a good wide receiver too. He tore his ACL last year, and he's started off the season slow, as many players off an ACL tear do, but he's ramping back up. And then you add OBJ, it's going to be a dangerous passing offense if they do so. Obviously, Lamb's their wide receiver one. He's been great.
Yeah, we'll see how. I guess we'll see what his true want is. He's coming off a Super Bowl ring already. Is he going to want to get paid? I know there was some rumors saying he was looking for more of a long-term type of contract this time around.
That's interesting. Yeah, it makes sense because of his injuries. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, he played on that short-term contract last year, and we all know the result of that. So now he's going to be going into this situation, thinking about weighing his options, and I wouldn't be surprised. I think Dallas, out of any contender, for the fact that of course they're just a good team, they're a Super Bowl contender in itself, but they will be the ones willing to pay the extra, who knows how much to bring him in. I think they'll be the ones willing to overpay more than anybody, and I think that's where he'll end up for that simple reason, because he'll want the extra $2.
It's very interesting to think about OBJ, because I feel like people forget how good he was to start his career. And obviously I don't expect that level of performance, with age and injuries have definitely affected his play over the past few years. But it's just interesting to think about, because I did not pay attention as much to football. I was a fan since I was a little kid, but back in 2014, his rookie season, I didn't pay as much attention to the stats and all of that. Even when he was traded, I wasn't that into football and fantasy football. But it's like, imagine if in 5-6 years, like this, we're talking about Justin Jefferson in this manner. Like, it's just crazy to think about how much has changed for OBJ over the past few years, and he's definitely still a quality NFL player. It'll be a good addition to wherever he signs.
Yeah, for sure. It'll be. Yeah, I mean, I am too. I love Odell. He's gotten a very bad rap. At least he went through a time period where he did get a very bad rap. I think that's kind of that narrative has changed.
The narrative changed a lot because of what happened with Baker Mayfield. Like, everyone was talking about how Odell was bad for the locker room and all that. But and then every Browns player comes out and says, no, actually, we love Odell. This is BS. And then Mayfield continues to play horribly, and then goes to a new team and still plays horribly. And pretty much no one disagrees with OBJ now.
Yeah, and then we saw how well. I mean, although Odell's not playing at that same level, he went to LA, and we saw he had a very noticeable impact on that LA offense.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, he opened it up, in a fashion that a lot of guys, on their roster couldn't. And in the Super Bowl, he had 40 to 50 yards in the first quarter, and their offense looked like they were going to put 45 up and win by 20. And he went down, and that was when the game got interesting, honestly. So
yeah, I agree. And you see the effect that it has on their offense. Obviously, Stafford with his injury this year has not been the Stafford we've seen before. But that offense, when it was just Cooper Kupp, and now no Cooper Kupp and not even Matthew Stafford, but back when it was like Kupp, Stafford, and then they had Allen Robinson as their wide receiver too, it was just not a functioning offense. Allen Robinson's not filling that role well. Like, they clearly miss OBJ, and it's tough that he did get injured. Otherwise, he's probably still a Ram to this day. But wherever he lands, he's gonna continue to help their passing game evolve of wherever he goes.
Yes, for sure. We actually have a question in the comment section from Bangwin02YT. Would you rather have Swift or Rachaad White rest of season if your playoff locked 9-3? I'll let the fantasy master take this one.
Yeah, I'll take Rachaad White rest of the season. In redraft, it's Rachaad. His role's good. Obviously, Leonard Fournette will be back. I think it should be back this week. Obviously, he missed the time last week, but what we've seen from Fournette throughout the season has not been a very good rushing product. Not that Rachaad White's an elite rusher, but even before Fournette got hurt, like when we saw the London game, Rachaad White got the start, and he had the majority of carries before Leonard Fournette got hurt. And so you're probably looking at Rachaad White being the RB1 of that team. We know we've seen what he can do in the receiving game, and that's going to be a great role. Swift, love the talent. It's just the role that he's in right now with the way that he's been in a reduced role with his injury. Like obviously he's not getting RB1 carries. He's still getting work in the receiving game. They're using him on some very choice routes. It's nothing where he's being benched or anything. They're just using him as a role player. And so right now I would rather have Rachaad White.
Yeah, I think I probably would agree considering the way that he's broken into the mold of that backfield. And, it's almost like they're almost in opposite roles. Swift had the starting job and he's slowly getting taken away from it. And Rachaad White slowly breaking into that starting job. Mm-hmm. And if Jamal Williams wasn't in Detroit, I think this question would be a lot different. Although who knows? I mean, there could be someone else taking the goal line carries if it weren't Jamal Williams. They just seem to really
Jamal Williams does just enough. He's just average enough that the team looks at him and they're like, okay, this guy he's reliable. He does what we ask of him. Yeah. He'll plunge forward. He'll get 4 yards. He'll be good on the goal line. He does exactly what an NFL team he does what an NFL team likes, and he's an all right NFL player. And so that's what his role is. It's not great for fantasy, but if he wasn't there, it'd probably be Swift in more of a bigger role because you're not going to see Justin Jackson doing that. What Jamal Williams is doing right now.
Right, exactly. I think I agree. But we'll move on to my final question for you for the Q&A. And that's going to be this. I'm sure you've seen it circulating, and it's been driving me nuts. I'm sure it's been driving you nuts, and I'm sure it's been driving anybody nuts. Is there any validity to Emmanuel Acho's tirade of this take of Tua over Justin Herbert?
No. I mean, Tua's not a bust. Like some thought, including me, he might be before this year. Obviously, he had a wide range of outcomes coming into this year, a lot of things up in the air, and he's hit a good ceiling. He executes his offense well. Obviously, he has great weapons and great coaching, and he does well. He's better than Jimmy G. So that's a compliment that I'm giving him. He's better than Jimmy G. But no, Herbert, since day one of his rookie season, basically has been an elite NFL quarterback. He hits throws that Tua simply cannot even dream of hitting. Herbert just by and large better. Like it's everything for around Herbert is worse, but throughout his entire career, he's been better. And I'm not going to let a few games without Mike Williams and without Keenan Allen where the numbers go slightly down, and they're not even that. Like this past week, he had almost 300 and 3 touchdowns. Like he's a phenomenal quarterback. The start of his career has been one of the best starts to any player's career. And so, no, it's still Herbert.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, of course. I mean, it's just the whole basis of this take, not even the Tua over Herbert thing, but the whole premise of it is the wins our quarterback stat. And that's been so debunked up to this point. I mean, we're in 2022, and this conversation has been dead for like what feels like at least 5 years now.
It should be long dead, yes.
It should be long dead. And it's
like, who would you rather have starting? Who would you rather have starting for your team? Would you rather have Zach Wilson? Or would you rather have Matthew Stafford? I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's common sense. And
Kyler. Okay, this is the best one. Would you rather have Kyler Murray or Zach Wilson? Come on, Aaron Rodgers or Zach Wilson? Who do you want? Like, come on. Obviously, wins aren't a QB stat. It's a horrible narrative to take. Like, it's a horrible narrative to take based off of wins.
Yeah, and it's just so tough because I respect him. He's a very very strong personality. I mean, at this point,
I don't respect him as an analyst.
Right, as an analyst.
Hopefully, hopefully I never get to a point where I have to face him and he brings up this clip and says something. But no, I'm not gonna be cordial, even though I'm sure he's a good person. I haven't heard anything that he's done bad. Maybe he has that I don't know of. But everything I know about him says that he's probably a good person. So no slight there. It's just everything I've seen from him, and this is very smart of him. I don't know if he's doing it on purpose or he's I
don't either.
But everything I've seen from him is bad takes that go viral, and so it definitely helps the viewership and the clicks. So that's got to commend him for that. But as far as giving actual analysis, I've barely seen anything from him that I actually think is good process or good analysis.
Yeah, I agree, and it's just frustrating because I go and I take advantage of an opportunity like this myself as a content creator, and the amount of people that agree with this type of thinking, it's so frustrating that this is still something that exists. And I mean, he says it perfect. If Herbert was in Miami with those, I mean, if Herbert was in Miami with those receivers, I think he'd probably be over 4,200 yards already. I mean, that's not even
Yeah,
like
if Herbert was in Miami with those receivers, he's in the MVP conversation right next to
he's
Patrick
probably
Mahomes
the
and Josh
MVP.
Allen.
He's probably taking it home already. Like,
Oh man, I can't do that
or
to
close.
Mahomes, but he's probably definitely
Yeah.
up there.
Yeah, for sure. But it is what it is. People are going to talk their talk and do what they got to do to get viewers. And you're right. It probably is on purpose. But the more he keeps going on about it, makes me think he actually believes it, which is even more
Yeah,
scary.
I don't think he's sitting wherever he sits when he makes content. And like, I don't think he's sitting in his home at his office desk thinking, "What takes can I make that I know are wrong?" I just think he sees how well the hot takes and the outrageous takes work,
Yeah.
and he's linked those in his mind. Those are correlated to views. So he's purposely giving hotter and hotter takes because he knows that it'll do this. Like, sorry, I didn't mean to say purposely. Like subconsciously, he links it. It's like a Pavlov dog or something where you see the hot take and you get the views, and he's just linking that. So
credit to him, I guess, for that sense, but it's bad. All right, we'll move on to our second to last segment of the show. This is the underdog segment of the week. We look at the upcoming slate and we come out with an underdog pick that we think could potentially win over the overdog. Do you want to start with yours for this week? It was a tough one. It was tough.
It is tough. I don't know. It's whenever you look at them, you just look at the team that's better and you say, well, they're probably gonna win, and so it's hard to pick an underdog. But I don't know. I'm looking at this. And I'm thinking maybe the Commanders, maybe the Bengals. It's tough though. Like Commanders, just because the offense for the Giants is not elite, and so Daniel Jones, not the worst quarterback in the world, but he's definitely not a good quarterback. And so what we see there is, if their offensive line continues to be banged up, Washington can come in, really disrupt them, and Heineke doesn't even have to play good football to succeed. He just has to play all right football, I guess. The Giants' defense is good, definitely, but that's something that could be a potential upset, especially a divisional battle could get a little rough. And then the Chiefs against the Bengals. Jamar Chase last year when he played the Chiefs, he had 260 yards. I mean, just phenomenal day. And not to say that he'll do that again, but he's had games like this throughout his entire career. At any moment, he can bust a game right open and make a huge play that completely flips the game. And he can do that multiple times in the game, which we saw him do last year against Kansas City. And so there's definitely a chance for this offense to just start clicking on all cylinders, and then firing on all cylinders. And then if they can do that, then they have a shot of outgunning Kansas City. It's tough because it is Kansas City, but we've seen some great things out of the Bengals offense.
Yeah, they cost me a lot of money last year. I bet against them every single step of the way, from the time they played the Chiefs in the regular season at the end of it, all the way through the postseason, up until the Super Bowl, where I still bet against them, and that finally paid off. But we've seen what they're capable of with Jamar Chase on the field, and it's a terrifying sight to see when it only takes the blink of an eye, and suddenly they're on top, or they're back in a game that they probably weren't in the first place. So,
and even T. Higgins, T. Higgins is a phenomenal receiver on so many other teams. He would be their wide receiver one. Yeah, I said it before this season. T. Higgins is probably a borderline top 10 receiver. I think
he's like third. I think I put him fourth.
I have not done rankings. I do fantasy.
Year.
I don't do NFL rankings. But if I was to do NFL rankings, it would probably land very close to the top 10, if not barely sneaking in there. Like we saw what he did in this last game where he had, I believe, 100 and a touchdown. Just phenomenal. And he can even do some things that Chase does, where in the Super Bowl, what was it, the first play of the second half, matches up against Jalen Ramsey and goes for a 75-yard touchdown. I mean, it's a phenomenal offense.
Yep, and it's definitely, T. Higgins. Funny you make that comment because I think the same way about him. I almost think he's, Jamar Chase is. I think he's great at contested catching. He's fantastic at going up and plucking a ball, a lot better than I think we all thought coming out of the draft. So I think that kind of jades our thought process of it because we didn't expect him to be good at it. But whereas T. Higgins, that's his specialty, and
the way he attacks the ball in his hands are just phenomenal. He's great.
Oh yeah, he can win any jump ball. I think he's Mike Williams type dominant at the point of attack. I would probably say that.
He makes Mike Williams look like Deontay Johnson in terms of catching.
Yeah, definitely.
It's insane. And so, and then when you have Chase on the field, that helps Boyd as well. And so it's a very well-rounded passing attack.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. But we'll get to my quick underdog choice of the week. I got Tennessee actually taking down Philly. I've not been. I was leaning more toward being sold on Philly as actually being the truth, being a really tough team to beat, and they are. Don't get that twisted. But
what they did last night was very impressive.
Yeah, they've been an exceptional team all season. It's just over the last 3 weeks, I feel like there have been, the ugly side of things have kind of been turning their head. Against the Commanders, we saw them struggle against that good defensive front. Who did they play the week right after that? And they barely beat the Colts. They barely squeaked away from the Colts, right? And then this past week, they do, a very impressive performance on offense, but they're also playing against a defensive front that consists of pretty much just Kenny Clark. And they manhandled the Packers throughout the entire 60 minutes. But their defense is, it was a little bit suspect, at least from my point of view. And they just lost CJ Gardner-Johnson for a few weeks too in the back end. So, you got a kid like Jordan Love stepping in and he's throwing touchdowns 3 plays in. He's slicing and dicing you up the field. Aaron Rodgers wasn't healthy and it wasn't playing great, but you really wouldn't think the Packers offense, especially considering its current state, it would be able to keep up in a game where the Philly offense had nearly 400 yards rushing. The fact that the score was only, a 7-point difference, you would think seeing that many rushing yards, it would have been a 20-point difference. But I think there are definitely things that could bite the Eagles in the ass later down the line. But for now, definitely remaining a dominant team. But they're certainly not immune to a potential upset, especially against a team like Tennessee that have, played spoiler all season long. All right. So we'll move on.
It's possible. Any given Sunday,
Any given Sunday has never applied to a season more than this one, it feels like. It's been chaos week in and week out.
It's always wild. The Eagles are not that great against the run. And so
no, they're not.
Definitely could be a matchup that is favorable, at least in that regard, towards Derrick Henry.
For sure. If Treylon Burks is able to continue building off of his recent momentum, then that secondary could get exposed too if Darius Slay and James Bradbury can't pick up the slack. But we'll see. I guess time will tell with that one. But we'll move on to the final segment of the day. This is the Caveman's Quiz Game. This is the most anticipated segment of the show. So if you don't know how the Caveman's Quiz Game works, it is pretty simple, honestly. You're going to get 5 quiz questions, Akash. It's going to be an off-season events question, but more like just a transactions overall question. They just haven't changed it. A stats question, a history question, a draft, and an awards question. You get to pick between the difficulties of easy, medium, and hard. Easy's 10 points, medium's 20, hard is 30. If you get the question correct, you get a follow-up true false, which is worth half of the original. You get 1 mulligan per game. If you get 1 wrong, you don't have to use the mulligan right away. You can hold on to it to the end and go back. But a quick disclaimer with that, if you take like a draft medium question throughout the game and then you want to go back to draft as your mulligan, I don't have another medium. So you'd have to take the easy or the hard. Just a heads up on that. And then you get 1 final wager question, which works like Final Jeopardy. You'll double your score, whatever you put down on it. And this is what the leaderboard is currently looking like. The leader is Hansel with 300 points. He killed it when he came on. And, I'm not sure.
Was that everything right and then doubling? Okay.
Hansel actually, he came on and picked every hard question.
That's what I'm thinking. Every hard question, and then put everything on the double Jeopardy type of thing.
Yeah,
and
I think
perfect score.
I don't think it was I think a perfect score is 500. So it would be.
Is it? You have 5 questions worth 30,
and then if you used your mulligan too, and you went back. So technically 6 questions, all correct, depending on how much.
Wait, can you use a mulligan when you get a question right? Like if you get all of them right,
If you get all of them right, I'll still let you go back and use a mulligan. Yeah, I've been pretty. I guess mulligan's the wrong word for that, but yeah, I've been pretty flexible.
Yeah. So then the best you can do is every hard question is 30 per, so that's 150, and then add in another 20, so 170 doubled 340.
And then the true false too, you got to factor in. So the following true false.
That's worth half.
Yeah, so 45.
I got to do math, man.
Yeah, I'll do the math for you.
45 times 5 plus 20 times plus 20 plus 10. So the highest score gets 510. Sure. 510.
Something like that.
Okay. So Hans is not even close to a perfect score.
Exactly. He's far off. So you definitely have an opportunity in front of you here.
Easy.
All right. So we'll start with the first question being the off-season events question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard? Is he going to go swinging?
The hard. I'm doing the damn bacon strategy.
All right. Here we go.
With my friend. Hey. Yeah, man. If he's doing it, I'm doing it.
He was the first one to do that, and he was a psycho ever since. But now people are picking up on it, and it's working out. I
want to end up on the leaderboard. No way to do that playing chicken. So
you are true. All right. So the first hard off-season events question is going to be this: 6 teams hired a brand new staff consisting of OC, HC, and DC this offseason. Can you name 4?
Interesting.
No time limit, by the way. So take your time.
No time limit. Okay. Let me think. The Bears are one of them. Broncos, Jaguars, and the Texans.
You're right. I did count the Texans in that. They technically didn't hire. I think it was an offensive coordinator they didn't hire because Lovie Smith is calling plays, but they did replace him with Lovie Smith essentially.
Brand new
so
staff. Yeah,
it still counts. So yeah, you're right. That is
awesome.
4. So that's 30 points right off the rip. Not too bad of a start. Some people I do like a survey prior to determine whether they're how hard or easy or medium the questions are, and some people were saying the Vikings, so I was looking to see if maybe you'd get tripped up with the Vikings, but you got it. That is
I was thinking about the Vikings, but I guess not that I would know. I just named teams that I knew hired a new head coach. If I had thought about the Vikings, I probably would have said them.
All right, well, you got 30 points. You avoided potential disaster. The true false question is going to be this: 10 of these 10 teams this season overall underwent a complete head coach change this season.
False.
That answer is true, actually. It was 10 teams. It was the 6 that were, the 4 that you mentioned, and then I'm not going to be able to remember all of them off the top of my head. But, yeah, it was 10. Chicago, Denver, Houston, Jacksonville, Las Vegas, the Giants.
Wow.
The Vikings were on that list. Oh, man, there were a couple other ones.
I remember a couple years ago it was like 6.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of turnover.
Damn it.
This year specifically.
Hansel got me, man.
No, not necessarily.
Not yet.
I think he got 2 wrong.
Okay, we'll get there.
Yeah, you're good to go. All right, so you got 30 points on the board. The following question is the stats question. Do you want to do the easy, the medium, or the hard?
Hard.
All right, he's sticking with the hard. Out of the 32 starting quarterbacks, who leads the league in completion percentage?
Geno.
The answer is Geno Smith. You are correct. Good freaking answer. Geno Smith leads it with, actually, what's the true false? I don't want to spoil anything. Okay, yep, you're right. Geno Smith does lead the NFL in completion percentage with a current 72% completion percentage. Geno Smith has, yeah, I mean, it's pretty damn good if you ask me, considering the fact that he had basically no expectations.
They wrote him off. He didn't write back, though.
They wrote him off, and he didn't write back. That was the line of the year. But yeah, 60 points. So you'll get the true false follow-up, and that is going to be this. The other 2 that round out the top 3 are Joe Burrow and Jimmy Garoppolo. True or false?
Wow. Okay, interesting. So I know last year Burrow led in this category, I believe. Jimmy G's always been a high expected points added per play type of guy. It would not surprise me, but also definitely would surprise me. Thinking Jimmy G's ADOT is relatively low just because of all the passes to Kittle, Debo, CMC, obviously. But Debo's catch rate's been lower this year, so it's tough. It's tough. I don't pay attention to completion percentage, unfortunately. If you ask me a stat like points per game, I'd probably have a better time at this, but I'm gonna say false.
You're right. It is false. It's
Okay.
neither of them, actually. Right now, the top three are Geno Smith, Tua Tagovailoa, and Mac Jones. Surprisingly enough,
Tua makes sense.
Is up in that category. So Joe Burrow is in the top 5.
Pretty good.
Jimmy Garoppolo is right outside, but yeah, you are correct either way. That's 15 more points. So you are up to 75 points through 2 rounds. So pretty solid start.
Coming for you, Hansel.
The third question is going to be the history question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard?
Take a guess.
All right, he's going to go with the hard. The hard history question is, where did the first regular season game outside of the United States take place?
Oh my. Oh goodness. Jesus, I don't know. Are you gonna have to go back to like the 30s or something and find some random game in Canada or something? Jesus.
The question mark is bothering me.
It's hard. So if it was the easy question, the answer would be London, I think. Maybe you're laughing about this because you know the answer is London, but I don't know. Could get a little tricky. I'm gonna say I don't know. I'm thinking like, yeah, fuck it. I'm gonna say Canada just because it's close, and maybe there was some game in the 30s where they're like, where it's like, oh no, our field's not ready. Let's just go to this field that's right across the border in Canada.
It wasn't quite that hard. Now, I feel like that would be like an impossible level question, but it wasn't quite that
I don't know.
hard.
They're supposed to be hard. So.
It is hard. I mean,
is the answer
Mexico City?
That was gonna be that was another thing I was thinking about.
Yeah, it was. They just played that. Who just played there? It was Arizona.
The Chiefs Chargers.
Right? Or was it?
No. That was in 2018. It was. You're right. It was the 49ers Cardinals.
49ers Cardinals. Yeah. So so it was Mexico City, but that's fine. I'll if you want to use your mulligan here, you can. Or if you want to hold on to it, like I said, you can hold on to it.
I can hold on till the end, right? So I might as well just wait and see.
All right, so he's going to hold on to it. Still 45 points on the board. Question number 4 is a history or the draft question. Do you want the easy, the medium, or the hard here?
I'll take the hard.
All right, he's going back to hard. The hard draft question is this. When did the Rams last have a first-round pick?
Oh, spooky. Let me think. He gave up 22 and 23 for Stafford. He gave up the Ramsey one was 20. Yeah, the Ramsey one was 21 and 20. What did they do in 2019? This tough. Dang it. Why can't you ask me the Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre one? I know the answer to that one. Thought you're gonna be like, the question would be like, what round was Brett Favre picked in and by which team? The answer is second round Falcons. But this one, last time the Rams had a first round pick, gonna say 2019? I don't know. Tough.
It was not 2019.
I almost say 18.
It was 16 with Goff. Jared Goff.
Really? I saw a fan talking about we haven't had a. They're like and finally they're like, oh, finally in 2025 we can pick in the first round, first one since Goff. But I thought they were joking. Damn.
No, that was legit. They have not.
Jesus, that's awful. What did they do with the other ones? I know they traded 2 for Ramsey, 2 for Stafford. What did they do with the others?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, they've shipped them all out. They do not care about draft capital in Los Angeles. It's 2016.
I'm not living up to the high standards that's set by Hansel.
Yeah, Hansel was killing it. I couldn't believe it when I was watching it. Yeah. That will be the
Brandon Cooks traded to Atlanta in 2019, and then they traded a couple to Ramsey.
Oh wow. Brandon Cooks.
They traded out. Oh, the 2019 they traded out, and the Falcons traded in for, was it McGarry, I think?
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, forgot about the Brandon Cooks one though. But yeah, 2017 they traded up to pick Goff. Okay, that's interesting.
All right. So, do you want to use your mulligan, or you want to hang on to it? Like I said,
I'll hold on for a little bit.
Okay. So, move on. Final regular question. This is the awards question. Do you want to do the easy, the medium, or the hard?
Yeah, I'll go hard again.
All right. You
even though it's messed me up a little bit.
No, I respect sticking with it.
Yeah, might as well.
Offensive Player of the Year in 2017.
Interesting. Offensive Player of the Year. Running back sometimes win this. The MVP was Brady. Gurley?
You're right. It was Todd Gurley.
Right,
Todd Gurley is the answer. That's 30 points on the board off of your previous 45. So you're up to 75 now.
Okay, if I get this right.
Yeah, this is big. This is big.
Yeah.
Let's follow up. True, false. Yeah, that's also true. True, false is he is the only running back to win it in the last 5 years. True, false.
Okay, so last year we had Cup, and year before that, 2021. No, year before that was 2020. That was the Jefferson's rookie year, and the Offensive Player of the Year was one MVP. Rodgers won MVP. Who won Offensive Player of the Year? The best wide receiver that year was. Who was the best wide receiver that year? Was it Tyreek? Diggs had a breakout year. No, Devontae must have won that one in 2020. Maybe. Chubb's been in contention for it a couple times. I don't think he's won it though. Let's see. Before that, it was Michael Thomas. 2018 was the year right after Gurley. And yeah, during CMC's best season, I think Michael Thomas won it. Other than that, it's been like Zeke, Saquon, Chubb. I don't think Chubb's won it. And then 2018 was it Mahomes? And did he win Offensive Player of the Year and MVP? So I'm gonna say true.
It's false. You forgot about Derrick Henry, 2,000 yards.
Oh,
Derrick Henry, 2,000 yards.
Was that the 2020 season? Yeah, it was 2020 season.
It was.
I was thinking Devontae won it, but yeah.
You listed every single year except for that one.
I listed that one, and then I said Devontae must have won it because he had what? How many touchdowns did he have? 18.
I think he had 20, didn't he? Or almost got there at least.
Almost 20. I think he had 18, but it was a phenomenal year for him. But Henry also had a good year. Forgot about Henry when I was listing great running backs.
It's all right. No worries, though.
It's because he doesn't catch passes, so I don't draft him in fantasy football.
Exactly. That's so they don't like the running backs that catch passes. They only like the ones that run for.
You say they so derogatorily.
Well, they as in like guys. Those guys that do the voting. They don't give like I thought McCaffrey should have won it in 2019, but
yeah, he was great.
But anyway, all right, we have the mulligan. Do you want to do? You can go back to any category you want. Like I said, it'll be a medium just because questions are hard to come up with.
Okay. I'll do. I think I'm best in stats, but also, hang on. I don't know. Your stats are like Pro Football Reference kind of stats. They're not the fantasy stats. So I'll go with stats.
All right, he's going to go back to stats. The medium stats question is
quarterback rushing yards. Oh,
which rookie wide receiver has the most receiving yards so far?
Ooh, before this week, I knew it was Olave. But Olave's been great. So it's between Olave and Wilson. Wilson had like 100 this week. He's had good games. He had 100 in the Buffalo game, and he had 100 as well in the Browns game. But Olave has just been repeatedly getting the targets and the production. I'm gonna say Olave.
You are right. It is Olave, and it's actually by a decent margin. But I won't touch on that quite yet. But Olave's been by far the most consistent because he's the number one receiver, and he's very good.
He's great. I think if Wilson in his games without Zach Wilson, he's definitely up there close to him. But Zach Wilson dragged the whole offense as well as Garrett Wilson down for a decent chunk of the season. So it's hurting his production a little bit, but he's going to be a great player.
All right, so the true-false follow-up is going to be this. Drake London is second on said list. True or false?
False.
You're right. We just kind of talked about it. But, yeah, you're right. That is another
talk about the margin. Yep.
All right, so that is
salvage it a little bit.
And 5 points in total.
Ooh, okay.
So you have – I don't think there's a chance at the leaderboard because Danny's at 169. But are you still going to –
105, right?
105. Oh, wait.
I can wager all. I can double. Wait, let's see the leaderboard again.
This is what the leaderboard is looking like. I don't know why. My math is terrible.
Yeah, so I can get up to tying with third. I get the chance to knock Dan off the list. That's all I've ever wanted. There's really no point in playing if you're not trying to get – do you even have a graphic for the leaderboard going down to 10th?
I have it on an Excel sheet. I don't have a graphic.
Yeah, I imagine so. But why would you have a graphic? So I'm not doing it unless I can get on the graphic. So,
all right. Yeah. So how much are you gonna put down? You gonna put it all down?
All of it. Yeah. I mean, 105 is not gonna get me there. So, if I don't get anything right, it's like whether I end up with 105 or 0, I'm not on the leaderboard. So I might as well just put everything and aim for third.
Fair enough. All right. So he's gonna put it all on the line. 105 points for the wager question. This is the final wager question. For 105 points, how many Pro Bowls has Josh Allen been nominated for so far?
Ooh, spooky. Obviously not in his rookie year or his second year. I would imagine not his second year. Maybe he got in somehow, some way, but I imagine not. Mac Jones can get in, anyone can get in, but but I don't think his second year would get there. And his third year is phenomenal. I believe in his third year he 4,500 plus passing yards. Might have been more, like a good amount more than that. And then obviously last year he probably got there too. He's Russian quarterback. And so this is his fifth year so far. So not in 2018, 2019, I don't think so. But then 2020 and 2021, I think he did get nominated. So I'm going to say 2.
It's actually only 1. He didn't make it in 2021. In 2021, that was when. Yeah, how the hell is?
I should have thought about like who else would have gotten, but I just feel like they should have had him in there. That's crazy.
That's how everybody felt.
I'm gonna try to guess who got in there. Mahomes, obviously, and then Herbert. You have 3 nominations, and so the last one, Lamar maybe, but no, Lamar's numbers weren't that good, and then he got hurt.
I think Lamar got the original vote, but he didn't go, so Mac Jones went.
What?
Remember Mac Jones was grittying into the end zone, and that was just.
I remember Mac going, yeah. But I remember him being like a substitute, exactly.
I think it was for Lamar.
Was Allen not the? Did Allen also elect not to go? No way that Mac Jones got in ahead of him.
I'm pretty sure. I think what happened was Lamar got the original vote, and then he chose not to go, and then Mac was. I don't know why, but it somehow only won in his career. But that's the Pro Bowl for you. It's an entire joke, but nevertheless, man.
Damn it! I end up with 0 points, guys.
Oh, it's not a big deal.
Follow me for football advice.
I'll be happy to definitely have you on later down the line if you ever want another crack at it, man. But I appreciate you taking time out of your night to join me. It was a good one. We covered a lot of ground.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you know, I'm a big fan of yours on Twitter. And if you guys ever need any type of fantasy advice, he does a lot of number crunching, and he's very articulated, and obviously. He's been spewing numbers left to right all night that I don't pay attention to at least nearly as much as he does. So he's definitely the smarter guy on the show tonight. So why don't you guys go shoot him a follow, of course, on all his socials, which are linked down in the description below. But yeah, thank you, Akash, for joining me. Is there anything else you want to plug? Any other things you want to say before we close the night out?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, follow me on Twitter for good things. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the Pro Bowl rosters right now, trying to see what happens. Yeah, no, they had it was Lamar, Mahomes, and Herbert. So fortunately, no Josh Allen. So fucking me over a little bit, but it's all right. I had fun. I know next time I got it, so we'll be all right. Yeah, it was just bad variance. You know, the process was all right.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's what happens, man.
Hunter Renfrow somehow got in the Pro Bowl. It's a joke.
Pro Bowl. I wonder how it probably won't be any better this year. But yeah, that'll be the wrap up of the cave. Thank you for anybody that stopped in tonight, left a comment, like, subscribed, did any of the sorts. I appreciate all of you guys for supporting. And we will be back next Thursday, just because my guest wasn't able to do Tuesday. So I got him next Thursday. So be sure to tune in for next Thursday. I'll be live streaming after the primetime game as well for Thursday. And thank you guys all for tuning in. Be sure you're following Akash on Twitter, and thank you for spending the night with me too, man. And I'll see you guys later.
Sure. Thanks for having me.